It's the Defiant Ones here at historic Washington Hall, welcoming Mark Haskins, man, back to the United States. Not only back to the United States, but to Washington Hall. First off, welcome to DEFY, and what was your experience, man, here at Washington Hall? What'd you think?
I'm very blessed. I had a wonderful experience tonight. Yeah,
nice.
I went out there and beat the fuck out of Artemis Spencer.
Yeah.
He beat the hell out of me, and yeah, here I am now realizing that adrenaline wears off, and I'm feeling all the bumps and the bruises.
Yes.
Just endured.
So this is your first time back in the United States after quite a while, 4 years, right?
Yes. So the last time I was here was literally as the pandemic hit. So we landed in Vegas. I was about to main event a pay-per-view for Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor World Title against Roosh. It was their 18-year anniversary. I turned my phone off of airplane mode, and it just says show's cancelled.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so it got a bit sort of.
That was the one with like Homicide versus Brody King. It was kind of the throwback ROH vibe.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so we were all just kind of stuck in Vegas for a few days, and we were kind of worried because we didn't know if the airports were going to shut down, and we were kind of rushing to get home, and unfortunately that ended up being like the last time that we saw a lot of those guys. So 4 years later, and like during those 4 years it felt at points like we would never get the opportunity to come back. So I'm very grateful and counting my lucky stars and what have you that I managed to get back here today.
You stayed busy though, so tell me about what you've been up to for the last 4 years over where you're from.
So just dealing with a lot of unresolved childhood trauma, to be honest with you, like realizing that I probably have a screw loose. But during the pandemic, I realized that I felt like I had an unhealthy relationship with fear, right? And I felt like too often I was making decisions based on fear rather than making a decision based on, something else. So I just put myself in as many uncomfortable situations as I could. Like, if it was pouring down with rain, there was a storm, I was going for a run up a mountain with a weight vest on, you know? And I was just taking on like ridiculous challenges. Like there's a challenge by a guy called David Goggins where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. Yeah, I did that twice. I started doing cold water therapy, working out in the gym at like 3 a.m. in the morning. Just doing so much ridiculous stuff because I wanted to find that point where you would want to quit, and then basically sort of realigning neurological pathways, because it's about finding that point and then like who you become in that moment, like talking yourself out of it. And it was weird because I felt very accomplished in a lot of ways in those situations, because you're in the middle of a field and no one's around, like no one's going to know if you just walk home, but like when you hold yourself accountable, it gives you so much more of a sense of empowerment. Like I just was very conscious of, by the time that I got back to wrestling once the pandemic was over, I wanted to be just a completely different animal, and sure enough I did. At one point I cut down to like 165 pounds and was shredded and looked great, and then realized we were going to be at home for a while, so I bulked up to like 206. So I wanted to break past 205 so that I could like look down my nose and order 205 lifers and be like, lightweights, I made it to 206. And then but I have 2 kids, 2 young kids, and they're brutal, man. They're like, Daddy, look at your belly, you're so fat, so you have to they humbleize you very quickly. So I cut back down. But no, I feel like, especially now, I look back at old pictures of myself and I think I've gained some decent sort of gains from that. And I guess just moving forward with life into like a later stage, I suppose. So apart from that, just been wrestling and being a dad and real life stuff.
So let's backtrack a little bit and get the whole story, man, if you don't mind. We can do a condensed version of it, but when was the first time wrestling entered your life?
When I was 9 years old, I had a childhood best friend, a guy called Andy Cook, who suffered from cerebral palsy, and we bonded over wrestling. I think I'd seen some Hasbro figures at a friend's house, and I was at a car boot sale and saw them and thought like, oh, the cool kids keep these. So I picked a couple up, and he saw them and was like, oh, I didn't realize you like wrestling. And I was like, well, what's wrestling? And he's like, that's what those figures are. So he brought round a VHS
thought they were
tape.
toys,
Exactly. And he brought round a VHS tape, and it was of Bad Blood 97, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker.
Great match.
Yeah, because I was a particularly I think cocky kid at times, and I could see a lot of myself in Shawn Michaels. Yeah, like, but you know, I remember getting beat up at school and like having my nose busted and being covered in blood. So seeing him like busted open, but seeing him like overcome the odds and beat up the bigger, scarier boy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think I just kind of resonated with him, and then he instantly became my favorite, and I became addicted with wrestling. And you know, my parents are still waiting for me to grow out of it now, so.
So how you know, how quickly did you realize that you could do it, that you could wrestle? Did you know that you could train to be a wrestler? Or?
Yeah, so well, it was something where I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I didn't care how much I was gonna suffer. I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. Like, you know, regardless of what happens. And that took me down a lot of different paths, and here I am. So it's been 18 years since my first match, and I guess 21 years since I first started training. Wow. And yeah, it's been a long journey, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man. So where did you first start training?
A place down in Portsmouth. It was the best place at the time, I think, for turning out talent. I was going to a lot of shows by a company called the FWA in the UK. They've had guys like your Doug Williams, your Jody Fleisch, like your Paul Burchills, and they were bringing over guys as well, like Christopher Daniels at the time, and AJ Styles. So I remember meeting CM Punk and Colt Cabana at one of their shows once. They were just sort of hanging out at the back of the hall. They had their match, and they were just watching the rest of the show. So I went over and said hello, and they seemed to be the company, because a lot of the guys who were on the show had come from their training school. So I figured, well, these are the shows that I want to be on, you know, then that's the route to take. And managed to convince my parents to, you know, drive me down. So my dad was a preacher for the United Church, and he was but he was also a science teacher at a military college. Okay. So every Sunday he was always at church, but because he and I we weren't particularly close when I was growing up, my mum thought it would be a good idea for us to bond if he took me down and drove me down. So for the first year it was like once a month, you know, traveling down and training. And then when I got out of school, I started to go maybe like once a week, and then eventually when I was 18 I just moved out of home, moved to Portsmouth, and then it was like 3 evenings a week and like 4 gym mornings a week, and then gymnastic sessions afterwards. Wow. And it just became my entire life, man. I just became like completely consumed by it.
In those early days, you probably weren't making too much money off of it, right? What kind of jobs did you hold to like feed your wrestling addiction?
So just so many depressing ones, like you know, like door-to-door ones where you're walking around all day
selling
tired.
Things,
not selling things. Okay, it's more like it, you know. And I was like a waiter for a bit. I ended up working in a clothes shop for quite some time, but then a weekend came up where they weren't going to give me the time off, and there was 2 shows where I was like, these both could be good opportunities that lead somewhere. So I remember it got to the day before, and I just said to them, I was like, look, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. You know, I'll take whatever consequences come of this, but like, I just wanted to give you a heads up so you can call somebody else in. And they were like, well, if you hand in your resignation, then, you know, fair enough. And then, so I worked out like for 1 more month working for them. And then I got picked up by Dragon Gate. So it kind of, it managed to pay off. You know?
Yeah. So tell me about, you know, your first real break though. So Dragon Gate, tell me about that.
So
what was that like for you?
It was cool. Like, because when I got the offer, Seema said to me, he was like, do you want to come to Japan?
This was Dragon Gate Japan, not Dragon Gate USA, right?
No, this was Dragon Gate Japan.
Yeah.
And Seema was like, do you want to come out and train out here? So I was like, yeah, cool. So in my mind, I was going into the dojo, and then I was just put on shows straight away. I was like, wait, what?
Wow.
Like, yeah. So I think there was like 30 dates while I was there, and I think I worked like 28 of them. So, but this was right around the time where I believe one of the guys got injured. I think it was Kotoka who got injured, and this was during the rise of Yamato, and he was going to wrestle Doi. So suddenly I went from being in the UK to like on a nightly basis. I remember wrestling Shingo a lot, Yamato, guys like Mochizuki, Sema, Dragon Kid.
Thrown into the deep end.
Absolutely, yeah. It was one of those surreal
That's a
moments,
test.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And it's so different as well because my style in the UK at that time was very kind of more like your pantomime-y, very vocal, very engaging with the crowd, and then suddenly you realize like that's kind of not the style here, so you have to figure out and navigate around that, and you have to be more resourceful and different with things. So it was
make you adapt to makes you rounded out as a wrestler, I'm assuming.
And I think that it's good, especially earlier on when I was first wrestling in the UK. Like there was a good handful of companies where it was very different. So there was one company that I was wrestling for that was like the old round style matches.
Sure.
So the shows there were completely different because you only had like 4 matches per show. The main event went on after intermission, but wasn't the last match. And the premise behind it is that whatever the last match was kind of like a bit of a throwaway match where it was extra. So people, if they had to get the trains, they could watch the main event and then leave, right? So like it was a different show altogether, but like a different feel. But then we were working, say like, at the time 1PW was big in the country. So, and that was kind of like your indie sort of hybrid shows. And then you had, like your Brian Dixon All-Star shows where it's more kind of pantomime. So, it was very well-rounded. You had to adapt to different sort of scenarios and different fan bases, and then you start going out to Japan, and then that's a completely different thing. But it's I feel like it's all kind of added little building blocks and like different key features along the way, so you can be adaptable and more versatile when it comes to being in front of different audiences.
Do you have a preference? Like what your favorite is, or you're down to do it?
No, like I'm happy. Like, well, it depends what mood I'm in on the day. Like, as long as the crowd enjoys it, like as long as you feel it. Like that was definitely one thing during the pandemic is when you take bumps and there's no noise, you're like, oh,
what is this
for? Absolutely. You don't realize like how much like people reacting gives you adrenaline and gives you just enthusiasm to keep going.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You need that feedback. You need that instant feedback. You're like, is this going well? I can't tell because we're not getting any. Like the fans are the ones who tell you if it's a good match or not, right?
They make the show.
Yeah,
like there's such an important part of the show. Like, and I think that the pandemic really highlighted that, where we all realized, like, man, we need to get like fans back at shows and kick COVID out of the way.
So Progress, tell me about your history with Progress, because DEFY and Progress are now partners.
Yes.
So tell me about your history with Progress.
So when I first got an email from John and Jim in 2012, they said that they were running a show in London. And at the time, there was this idea in England that running a show in London was a terrible idea.
Really?
So I was just like, good luck with that, and ignored it, and then heard like nothing but good things from the first show. I was like, oh damn, like this seems to have promise here. And then I think I came in around chapter 7 and realized like, this is actually really cool. Like they have their stuff together, and they just kind of watched it grow and helped it grow from being in front of 350 people to then it went up to I guess it went up to about 800, 900 people in the Electric Ballroom. And it was weird because at that time, like I didn't anticipate that British wrestling was going to take off. So then I was like, it's not going to get better than this. And then it just continued kept getting bigger and bigger. And they came out here to the US and started doing more shows. And then they did things like Brixton in front of 2,500 people, and then Alexandra Palace in front of like 3,000, and then it worked up to Wembley Arena in front of 5,000, and it was just it was just this mad ride, that I think looking back, a lot of us just kind of took for granted because we you're too busy kind of freaking out about it, or doing it, that you don't take the time to really appreciate the little moments as you're doing it along the way.
Who are some talent that might be underrated from your scene? People that you think should get some more shine that people might not know.
Guys now,
or any it could be people that you started with that don't wrestle anymore. Just like name a few that we should check out on YouTube.
Well, somebody who I think is going to be a big deal within the next few years is Leon Slater. He's just got with TNA, but he's a good kid. And I feel like
he's with men like Diers.
Yes. Yeah. Diers is another one who's great. I think that they're still sort of early on in their careers, but they're already, excellent. So I think that they're just going to continue to get better and continue to grow. There's guys like LJ Cleary, who's out wrestling for Pro Wrestling Noah now in Japan. He's another guy that I think is definitely going to be a big name within the next few years. And then I guess past that, you have people like, your Ricky Knight Juniors, they're on their way up. Guys like your Luke Jacobs, I think they'll continue to do good things. And I think you'll be seeing a lot more of them coming out this way, especially with the working relationship between DEFY and Progress. Yeah. So, hopefully you guys get to see some of them.
With all of the skills that you've attained, and all the different styles, are you a trainer at all? Do you have any interest in doing that?
So initially, no. But my good friend Flash Morgan Webster has basically tricked me into being a trainer at his school. So, he was like, I'll come down and do a training seminar. I was like, cool. And then he was like, oh, I need this class being covered. I was like, okay. And then he's like, I'll get you a key cut. You're going to be one of the trainers now. And I'm like, am I? Like, So, he's kind of like...
He tricked you into a job.
A little bit, yeah. But I appreciate him for it because, like, I guess just, looking... Yeah. I think there was, to some extent, I just had like a bad stigma from training years ago. So I just, I was very conscious that we could be the generation that changes everything, So it'd be nice to be able to give back. And I guess like as well, like, I think that you can often kind of forget where you are in your career, like in my mind, I'm like always trying to progress and I'm like, no, I should be learning. And it's like, no, like you have 18 years worth of experience, like, help somebody else. So I guess I am a trainer now. So.
There you go. Nice. So outside of wrestling, what kind of stuff are you into? Are you a big fan of music or
so I love heavy metal.
Okay. I kind of figured as much with the tattoos and the long hair. So what kind of bands are you into?
So I don't really like singing. Well, I mean I like Metallica and Motorhead. Hatebreed are another band that I like. Disturbed. A lot of the time it's just kind of one-off tracks. Like I'll just have like a gym playlist and then march around the gym.
Man.
Listening to it. Jacked up on caffeine and ADHD and can't sit still.
Nice.
So,
If you if money wasn't an issue, no budget requirements, and you were at and you were given a chance to hire any band to make you a custom theme song, who would it be?
Oh, good question. Maybe Metallica.
Cool, That'd be cool, right?
Yeah.
Do the old Sandman intro, but it would be your own song.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, probably somebody like that.
Metallica would be pretty badass.
Yeah.
Goals in wrestling, I mean, you've done a lot. You've been in it a long time. What are your goals now?
So initially two things. One of my good friends, Chris Travis, died years ago, and one of the things he said before he died was that he wished he'd just lived in the moment more and enjoyed it rather than worrying about what was coming next. So especially because I never thought like with the pandemic that would be able to be taken away from you, so it's made me a lot more conscious of like stop worrying, stop freaking out, just enjoy yourself and do the best that you can, I'm just grateful that I'm still alive, I'm still here, and getting to do it, and so I'm just trying to enjoy myself, and the past 18 years have flown by. If I've got another 18 in me, I'd be surprised. So I'm just trying to enjoy whatever length of a career I have left, really, and
that's wonderful.
But I also on top of that, I say like within the next few years, I'm kind of at that stage where I'm like, fuck it, let's find out, So I'm like, I'm gonna make some ballsy moves, and it's like gonna be ballsy to the point where either I'm gonna be ridiculously successful, or I'm just going to have a really good autobiography to read in years to come. Yes. So, watch his space and we'll find out.
Nice. I like that, dude. Okay, my last question for you, man, here on the Defiant Ones. Mark Haskins, of course, here, making his Washington Hall debut, and welcome again. Pick a scar on your body. Does not have to be wrestling related, but pick a scar, tell us the story, and show us if you can.
Okay, so I don't know if I'm going to get into trouble for this, right?
Okay.
But can you see that scar there on that finger?
I can see
Very
it. Can
faint.
you show?
So you might be able to see it there, right? That scar cost Ring of Honor about 20 grand. Right?
Jesus.
So what happened was we were wrestling in a state that had an athletic state commission.
Okay.
And they take wrestling very seriously still, right? So I take this. I'm in an Extreme Rules match with Bully Ray, right?
Yeah.
I take a powerbomb through a barbed wire table,
Yeah.
and as I'm pulling myself out of wreckage, I cut this finger open. Now, the Athletic State Commission are very strict with their rules that you're not allowed to bleed, right? So, I mean, obviously, I've just been through barbed wire, right?
Yeah.
Cut myself open.
How are they about to? What do they expect? You know.
So they're the next show that we sort of, you know, that we were there for Ring of Honor, they were like, we need you to sign this form. I was like, what's it for? And they were like, yeah, basically, like, you're not allowed to bleed. You know, and you know, they, to their credit, right, Ring of Honor were like, we asked you to put this match on, we're picking up the tab for it, and no penny is coming from like your guys' pockets, but yeah, you need to basically take a slap on the wrist essentially, and say that you promise that you're sorry and it'll never happen again. So
I'm sorry.
I've been in enough trouble where you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll promise it'll never happen again. Wink, and then a year later we have the rematch and do it all again.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, welcome back to Defy, and we would love to have you back, man. Any final words for the Defiants?
Just carry on, supporting Defy, like, genuinely, like, being out there tonight, like, that crowd is a dream, there's so many audiences that go there and become almost stubborn or stuck up, and they are not like that at all. Like, they are one of the easiest, funnest crowds. Like, I'm genuinely buzzing tonight, That's
awesome.
And, I'm so grateful that I got to be here and got to do this. So, just continue to support Defy and continue to be an awesome crowd and actually enjoy it,
Yes.
Like, that's what we're here for. We all do this out of love and out of passion. And
yeah, man.
Yeah. Just
wait, I thought we were all doing it because you're getting rich,
That's it. We just need jobs.
Yeah,
that's
there you go.
We went on, job center websites.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, pro wrestler. Okay, I guess I'll do it.
Exactly. I don't even know what that is. Mark Haskins, thank you so much, man. Defiant Ones.
Life at